A heartbeat beneath a mountain. At first, they thought it was an echo of the wind, but the ground itself was breathing. Beneath the soil, under mountains and oceans, the past does not rest. It waits, quietly, patiently, inside the stones we build upon. And sometimes, when curiosity cuts too deep, we uncover things that shouldn't be there. A mask beneath a pyramid, a plug sealed in ancient rock, a dagger carved from light, a whisper of metal older than time, each one carved with impossible precision, each one glowing with meanings we no longer understand. They are not just relics, they are memories, messages left for whoever would come after. And tonight, we listen. A low hum builds, wind through hollow corridors, distant drums under the earth. 5 forbidden artifacts, 5 questions that history can't answer. The journey begins beneath the Pyramid of the Sun, where the first forbidden face was found. Fade to black. One echo remains, a single breath beneath the stone. The mask, beneath the pyramid. They called it the City of the Gods, but even the Aztecs, who found it already in ruins, didn't know whose hands had built it. Teotihuacan, a name spoken like a prayer or a question no one has answered. Beneath the Pyramid of the Sun, under millions of tons of stone and silence, a small team of archaeologists broke through an ancient chamber. The air that spilled out was older than memory, damp, metallic, heavy with time. Flashlights cut through the dark, catching glints of obsidian and bone. And there, lying at the center, was a face. Not painted, not stylized, but carved in green serpentine, smooth, human, impossibly alive. The team stood frozen. The mask's lips were soft, its eyes half open, as if it had simply paused between breaths. It wasn't the face of a god. It was the face of someone who remembered one. Every artifact around it, blades, pottery, animal remains, had been placed with ritual precision, as if the builders were composing a message in objects instead of words. It was less a burial, more a conversation across centuries. Then the evidence deepened the mystery. Some of the bones buried beneath this structure predated the pyramid itself, meaning this site had been sacred long before the first stone of Teotihuacan was ever set. The scientists fell silent. Even logic seemed to hesitate. Who were these people who worshipped here before the city rose? And who carved that mask, leaving behind a face that looks so human it defies the gods? It was meant to honor? The chamber lights flickered. Across the mask's polished surface, the green stone caught a trembling shimmer, as though the light itself remembered something it wasn't supposed to. A chill passed through the room. One of the researchers whispered later that he felt watched, not by superstition, but by history itself. Stone shouldn't remember, but sometimes matter does what memory cannot. It holds a fragment of what once was. When the excavation ended, they sealed the chamber again, leaving the mask beneath the pyramid, just as they had found it. Up above, sunlight washed over the ruins, turning the ancient stairways gold. Life moved on. Yet somewhere, far below, that green face still waits in the dark, waiting, not to be worshipped, but to be understood. The ENIGMALITH, the plug-in stone. It began, as many discoveries do, with something that should have been ordinary. A walk through an open field, a glint of light where there should have been none. In 1998, electrical engineer John J. Williams picked up a small stone, half buried in the soil of rural North America. It was smooth, weathered, nothing remarkable, until he brushed away the dirt. There, fused seamlessly into its surface, was a metallic object. 3 perfect prongs, arranged like the end of a modern electrical plug. Except the rock itself was ancient, and no one, not even modern machinery, could have placed it there without breaking the stone apart first. He turned it in his hands, sunlight sliding along the metal tips. It looked familiar, painfully so. A shape born of our own century, sealed inside something millions of years older. Impossible. He took it home, measured, tested, examined. Geologists who later inspected it agreed. The rock appeared to be tens of thousands of years old. The metal was fused, not glued, not inserted into the natural matrix. Under X-ray, faint shadows appeared inside the stone, dense, geometric, almost mechanical. When the first images reached scientific circles, disbelief followed immediately. Some said it was a hoax, a planted object covered in concrete. Others called it a natural formation that merely resembled technology. But Williams insisted it wasn't. He refused to cut the artifact open, fearing that once it was broken, the mystery would die. That decision divided the world around him. To skeptics, it was proof of deceit. To believers, it was proof of reverence. In truth, perhaps it was both. A man standing between wonder and evidence, unwilling to destroy one in order to save the other. Years passed. The object, now nicknamed the ENIGMALITH, remained in his possession. He never sold it, never displayed it, never chased attention. He guarded it quietly, as if protecting a fragment of a story too dangerous to tell. If the object is real, two possibilities exist, and both are unsettling. Either an ancient civilization achieved a level of engineering we cannot yet comprehend, or something else left it here, long before humanity walked upright. And yet, what makes the ENIGMALITH truly haunting isn't the technology it might represent. It's the silence that surrounds it. There are no writings, no tools, no cities to match it. Only one object, defiant and alone. In that solitude lies the real enigma. Science demands patterns, context, comparison. But the past often speaks in fragments, not in full sentences. Sometimes a single stone, with a whisper of metal inside, can rattle the entire logic of progress. Imagine holding it yourself. The weight cool in your palm, the surface rough, the metal edges catching the light. It feels both new and impossibly old, like shaking hands with a ghost who remembers the future. And in that quiet moment, one realizes, we do not always discover the past. Sometimes, the past discovers us. The reptilian figurines of UBAID. The desert of southern Iraq doesn't keep secrets easily. The wind strips everything bare, the soil, the stones, even memory. And yet, beneath the shifting sands near ancient Tel al-Ubaid, something extraordinary survived. Archaeologists expected pottery, tools, maybe remnants of early farming life. What they found instead stopped them cold. Small figurines, some no larger than a hand, emerged from the earth. Not human, not animal, something in between. Bodies slender and scaled, eyes almond-shaped and unblinking. They wore helmets, they carried staffs, and one, perhaps the most haunting of all, depicted a mother nursing her child, both reptilian. At first, the scientists thought it symbolic, a fertility idol, a metaphor for rebirth, but the details were too specific, too deliberate. These were not the exaggerated forms of myth. They were anatomical, careful, studied. Whoever made them had seen something they couldn't forget. The UBAID culture existed 7,000 years ago, long before Sumer, long before writing. They built small settlements, farmed the land, crafted pottery. Nothing about them suggested the imagination of reptilian deities. And yet, here they were, dozens of figures that didn't belong in any known belief system. The team cataloged every find, documenting measurements, clay composition, radiocarbon samples. Science does what it must, record before it interprets. But interpretation always comes, eventually. Some researchers linked them to serpent myths that appear across the world. In India, the Naga, half human, half snake. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. Among the Hopi, legends of underground snake brothers guarding the earth. Too distant, too consistent to be coincidence. It's as if the same image, half reptile, half divine, kept surfacing in the collective human mind, like something we were all trying to remember. Skeptics argue the figurines are metaphors, symbols of fertility, of transformation, of fear. And perhaps they're right. Perhaps ancient people gave their gods scales because scales endure. Because reptiles shed their skin, die, and return renewed. A metaphor for the cycle of life. It's poetic, yes, but the unsettling realism of these figurines makes that explanation feel incomplete. Standing in the dig site, under the brutal Mesopotamian sun, one can almost feel eyes beneath the soil. The statues stare upward, through millennia of sand and silence. Their gaze is neither menacing nor kind. It's the calm indifference of something ancient enough to outlast meaning itself. Could they be memories, carved by a culture that once encountered something they could not explain? Or did they arise from the same human dream that gave birth to dragons, to gods, to every story where the heavens meet the ground? When the excavation ended, the artifacts were cleaned, photographed, placed in museum drawers, catalog numbers replacing myth. But no label, no scientific note, can quiet the feeling that hums when you stand before them. A feeling that the earth remembers more than we do. Because sometimes, the things we call legends are simply the world refusing to forget. The crystal dagger of Montelirio, southern Spain. The sun falls over the rolling hills of Andalusia, painting the earth in gold and dust. Beneath that quiet landscape lies a tomb, the Tholos of Montelirio, 5,000 years old, its corridors lined with ivory, amber, and gold. But among all the treasures found there, one object stands apart. A dagger, carved not from flint or bronze, but from pure rock crystal. When archaeologists uncovered it, the room fell silent. Even through layers of dust, it gleamed faintly, as if holding its own light. The blade was translucent, perfectly symmetrical, every edge polished until it shimmered like frozen water. No trace of tool marks, no fractures. It was as if someone had shaped light itself and then decided to call it a weapon. But crystal is brittle. It cannot cut. It cannot kill. Whoever made this dagger didn't build it for war. They built it for ceremony, for connection. Across cultures, across continents, crystal carries the same meaning. Purity, energy, transcendence. From the quartz skulls of the Aztecs to the crystal relics of Tibet, humankind has always looked at this mineral and seen something alive, something that remembers sunlight. The dagger was found among 25 human burials. Some wore cloaks woven with thousands of tiny beads. Others rested with ivory bracelets or amber ornaments. Every life there ended in ritual, perhaps sacrifice, perhaps reverence. The dagger lay beside them all, gleaming faintly in the torchlight, as if absorbing every secret that death could not take away. The scientists measured its dimensions, analyzed the mineral composition, and mapped the micro-fractures to understand the craftsmanship. What they discovered was not just skill, but intention. Crystal of this purity was not local. It had to be brought from far away, traded, or carried across mountains. The maker of this dagger worked with precision, bordering on the impossible, grinding and polishing without iron tools, following lines invisible to the eye. And for what? A blade that could not wound, a weapon that could only shine. Maybe that was the point. Maybe to the people of Montelirio, this dagger was not a symbol of power, but of passage. A bridge between the physical and the eternal, forged from the very material that captures light, yet lets it pass through. A reminder that what is most fragile can also be the most sacred. When you imagine it, held aloft during a ceremony, crystal catching fire from torches, you can almost hear the murmurs echoing through the chamber walls. Not prayers, not words. Something older. A vibration that connects the living to the dead, the present to the past, as if the stone itself carried a frequency the heart could still recognize. To hold that dagger, even through gloves, would be to feel time itself breathing, ancient hands passing through yours, leaving warmth that doesn't belong to any century. It's strange how often beauty hides where violence was expected, how an object shaped like a weapon can be instead an offering, a reminder that civilization was not born from conquest alone, but from the quiet wish to speak with whatever lies beyond. The crystal dagger of Montelirio doesn't tell us how people lived. It tells us how deeply they felt. And that may be the greatest discovery of all. The nanospirals of the Urals. The miners were looking for gold, but what they found was smaller than a grain of sand and far more precious. In 1991, high in the icy winds of the Ural Mountains, a prospector bent over a sieve, washing away the silt of a riverbed. Something metallic glimmered for a split second, catching the northern sun. When he lifted it to his eye, he saw a curl of metal so perfect, so deliberate it felt made. Dozens more appeared, microscopic spirals, some of copper, some of tungsten and molybdenum, metals that melt only in the heat of furnaces. Under the microscope, they were breathtaking. Tiny coils engineered with symmetry that rivaled modern aerospace components. But here's the impossible part. The sediments that cradled them were ancient, 20,000 years old, maybe 300,000. A time when the tallest thing humans had built was a campfire. The scientists examined them carefully. Contamination, they said. Mining debris, coincidence. But the patterns repeated across multiple valleys, miles apart, buried deep in untouched soil. Too deep for mistakes, too precise for chance. One researcher later confessed, "It's the precision that haunts you. Nature makes chaos beautiful. But this looked intentional." Under magnification, the coils gleamed like galaxies in motion, each curve turning inward, then outward, echoing the same rhythm found in seashells, hurricanes, and DNA. The deeper you looked, the more it felt as though the universe itself was staring back. And that's when the room went quiet. Not the silence of disbelief, but the kind that arrives when awe becomes unbearable. If these spirals are natural, then nature itself is an engineer beyond comprehension. If they are not, then we are not the first to hold a blueprint. Maybe the real revelation is not who made them, but why the pattern feels so familiar. Because the spiral is not invention, it is memory. It is the way energy moves when it wants to last forever. From galaxies to atoms, from rivers to fingertips, it repeats. It's the handwriting of existence, looping endlessly until someone notices. Sometimes, I wonder if the miners ever knew what they'd touched. If they felt, for a heartbeat, the weight of something infinite resting on the tip of a finger. A coil of metal smaller than dust, and inside it, the echo of everything. Today, those spirals rest in sealed glass containers, labeled unexplained, but every now and then, under a microscope's white light, one still catches the glow, a silent rotation, still turning after all this time. And as you watch it spin, you can't help but feel the hum of something ancient and alive, as if the universe itself is whispering through metal. I was here long before you, and I will still be turning when you are gone. The sound fades. The hum beneath the earth, the slow heartbeat of forgotten worlds. What remains is silence, thick, ancient, alive. We have walked through deserts and tombs, across oceans of time, chasing whispers carved into stone and metal. 5 relics, 5 questions. And somehow, it feels as if they were never about the past at all, but about us. Each artifact we touched seemed to hold a reflection of our own hands. Our hunger to understand, our fear of forgetting, our hope that something greater once walked beside us. Maybe that's the real mystery. Not what these objects are, but why we still listen for them. The past is not dead matter. It breathes. It remembers. And tonight, for a brief moment, it spoke again. A soft wind moves through the ruins now, stirring the dust. Light falls on the old stones, and for an instant, it feels like they exhale. Maybe that's how memory works, not as words or dates, but as a feeling that refuses to fade. If these echoes have stirred something in us, a question, a wonder, even a quiet doubt, then perhaps that's the purpose of discovery itself. Not to end the mystery, but to keep it alive. So let's keep walking, keep searching, keep wondering. And if this journey has found its way into your thoughts, share what it awakened in you. Because every reflection, every voice becomes part of this continuing story. Our story. The dust settles, the light dims, but somewhere beneath the stone, the hum begins again. Chronicle of Secrets, where the past still remembers us.